Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm glad you joined me for today's upload. We will be continuing our hashtag AskX series. For those who have missed the past few episodes, because Star Wars is so slow right now, I've decided to hand the reins over to you guys. Ask me questions down in the comments with the hashtag AskX and I'll try to answer it. No sponsor today, but I did for the first 10,000 views forget to include Vite Ramen's information down in the description. That was for yesterday's video, so I'm going to include that for this one as well. Follow that link and you can get delicious ramen for 10% off with the code Eckharts. Today's question is a very interesting one. It's from Garrick Story and asks, could someone who wasn't originally born Force sensitive become Force sensitive at some point in their life and thus maybe become a Jedi or Sith? This is a really fun question and the answer might surprise some of you. I mean, maybe not if you've seen Ahsoka, but we'll get to that sort of mundane training yourself into a basic level of Force competency later. I want to start this video off by documenting a couple of the weirder ways that you can gain Force powers. First of all, we have Crucible, perhaps the least discussed Star Wars book of all time. This is actually where my mind goes whenever I hear this question or similar ones, because it has one of the most insane moments in Star Wars. It's sort of the last time we see all of the main heroes, and they're facing off against two Calamai masterminds. Calamai are an extremely funny alien species in Star Wars. They're sort of like the 1950s version of extraterrestrials from our world. Anyway, in short, they're trying to gain Force powers because they're trying to take over the entire galaxy, and they discover a monolith which they believe will have the ability to grant them Force powers. This was sort of right after the Abeloth saga, and the next storyline was probably going to be Luke tracking down the Mortis monolith to look for the dagger so that Abeloth could be killed permanently. Anyway, this wasn't the Mortis monolith. It may have been another celestial creation, but shocker, it actually does have the ability to give individuals Force powers. Han shook his head. You're missing the point, he said. Bardoon was some sort of accident. He wasn't born Force sensitive, and he wasn't one of their buyout experiments. He was a normal guy who couldn't use the Force at all, until after the Quirreffs sent him in here. It's like something got into him. And that's more close to the truth of what's happening. The beings aren't being gifted the Force, they're probably being possessed in some sort of way. Either way, while they do become Force sensitive, they also go insane. However, the realm itself is also a nexus of raw Force power, so those within it are also extraordinarily powerful. Luke and Leia pull off some incredible feats of healing and Force attacks. Even Han starts to feel the Force a little bit, and it ends with the revelation from Luke to his son Ben that there could be dozens of these monoliths, or maybe even thousands. The Crucible and monolith is not the only way a being can be imbued with the Force or even have their Force powers magnified. For one, in Splinters of the Mind's Eye, the potential sequel for Star Wars had the film not been successful, we learn of the Kyber crystal, not Kyber, Kyber, K-A-I-B-U-R-R. This is an artifact which can multiply a being's Force potential by many, many times. Anyway, you can read the book because it's short and pretty fun, but we see the impacts of the crystal during and after Luke's duel with Vader. Let's talk about Kyle Katarn, and one of the popular misconceptions of Katarn is that he wasn't Force sensitive before the Valley of the Jedi. Now, this is obviously untrue. If you've played Dark Forces 2, Kyle Katarn has latent abilities which are certainly magnified by the Valley of the Jedi, as it is an extremely powerful Force nexus, but not really correct to say that he's given Force powers. It's the same thing in Jedi Outcast. Kyle Katarn sort of moves away from the Force, then after Jan is kidnapped by Dasan, he goes to the Valley of the Jedi so he can kind of level back up to where he was. I've covered the circumstances over the creation of the Valley of the Jedi before. Basically, there was a device known as a thought bomb, which the Sith used to end their war against the Jedi. You can read all about that in the Darth Bane series. Specifically, Book 1 covers all of that. We also see, for example, in Dark Empire, several individuals, including Zycar Nist, made Force sensitive through the sheer power of Palpatine. They basically become his Dark Jedi, replacing others killed earlier on. You'll see the same things at times with Sith like Exar Kun, who can directly take control of an individual or basically enslave them while giving them powers. And some of you who enjoyed the old Dark Forces / Jedi Knight series were probably wondering whether I was going to bring up not just the Valley of the Jedi, but also the Scepter of Ragnos, which is the main plot driver of the third game, Jedi Academy, and it's used to make the disciples of Ragnos Force sensitive. Basically, again, sort of like making unskilled Dark Jedi. This list is nowhere near exhaustive, but is meant to be illustrative of some ways people not already Force sensitive could could get massive increases of power to the point where they were nearly or even beyond Jedi or Sith level. As you can see, for the vast majority of the time, there's a major catch. There aren't too many examples that I can think of beings elevated from basically zero to really force sensitive through unusual means like this. Again, there are exceptions, going once again to the Jedi Knight series. The Reborn were pretty much dark Jedi imbued with the Force by Lord Hethrier. Other strange examples would include Abeloth, who was an ordinary being until being transformed into the creature that we all know and love. Another related but interesting topic is the way in which some beings or even races can develop the Force as a way to adapt, and this sort of goes back to the general idea that all beings in the Star Wars galaxy, with a few exceptions, have a general level of connection to the Force. The Force binds all. The midichlorians are there. It's sort of described quite well in Ahsoka, I think, as the Force is available to everyone, the door is just left wide open naturally to some. People of the Zaysan Shah, for example, developed the Force basically as a survival mechanism. On a somewhat different note, the Yasana, who came from Ossus, were as a people genetically Force strong because of the presence of, well, everything on Ossus, including the former Jedi Great Library. Other civilizations use the Force in quite interesting ways. The Rakata, for example, had Force-based technology and may have been imbuing themselves with the Force. Similarly, the Cyruk, through the method of entekment, took Force energies and used it to power their machines. Again, not quite the same thing as giving the Force to someone who doesn't already have it, but related. You get the same thing from the classic Episode 2 game with the Dark Harvester. I mean, if you can take the Force energy, you can probably beam it back into someone. Why not? Anyway, I think that answered the question. Again, not exhaustive. There are many more examples I could have brought up. If there's one in particular you'd like to see me discuss, please let me know down below. As for, I think, the more general question of whether a non-Force sensitive being can develop that power, the answer is yes, and I'm not going to retread everything there because I actually covered it pretty in-depth recently given the events of Ahsoka. In Star Wars Legends, there was George Cardass, an individual who basically gains a degree of Force sensitivity after studying with the Ang-Ti monks for several years. But I'll link to that video. Let me know what you thought about this and more, and of course, if there's any questions you guys would like to see me answer on the channel, leave it in the comments with the hashtag AskEck, and this is important. If you see a question that you'd like to see answered, make sure you also give it a thumbs up. But that's all for today. I'll see you soon.